All right, we are here with Charley Miller from OrgVitals, and we're super excited about having Charley here. He is a partner with us, and OrgVitals is one of our partners, and he is the partner and co-founder of OrgVitals. So, welcome, Charley. I understand you had a nice ice storm last yesterday, so caused a little bit of havoc.
Yep. Thank you for having me on. Really nice to talk to you, Jason. And indeed, yesterday in Louisville, Kentucky, we had the schools down thanks to some ice here. So juggling a little bit, but it's all good.
So, talk to us a little bit about what OrgVitals is doing. Man, you guys have a really unique way of measuring what's going on in an organization, and so we partnered with OrgVitals because we really liked what you guys were doing and what we're all about. So, you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Of course, yeah. So we OrgVitals is advanced people analytics, really focused on how employers can create employee experiences that sustain high performance and really take care of people. Our whole theory is that we've really entered this age of the employee now, where you've got to put employees at the center of your business model, especially in industries where you have highly skilled people or you have essential workers, healthcare, construction, manufacturing, hospitality. Like, what do you need to do to make sure your people feel valued and that they can really thrive in their work? No longer are the days that people can hire out of these problems or just throw benefits at these problems. They need the data to really understand what's going on in their culture and understand what they can do to create these employee experiences across, belonging, alignment. And a big thing right now is avoiding burnout. So what do we do at OrgVitals? We help employers understand how to develop continuous listening. We usually work through consultants like Thrive HR, where there's an engagement to transform the culture because they understand the problem. They're ready to invest in it. We come in to help kind of capture the data through continuous employee listening, develop the right processes, and then provide not just the evidence of what's going on, but make sure we provide the capacity for the consultants and the leaders to do something about it, taking that data, understanding what it means, and making sure everyone is aligned around it, and coming up with a roadmap of what can be cultivated in terms of better employee experiences. We see all kinds of stuff coming through our system, but I think one thing that makes OrgVitals really unique is that we use network analysis. That gives a context to the culture. We literally map all the individuals and who collaborates with whom within a organization, and then we layer all the culture data on top of that, which helps us to isolate individuals and groups to really understand who needs support, and even looking at sort of tenure tracking, where in the employee experience are there gaps that need to be filled, where are the blind spots the consultants and employers need to address.
Yeah, that map is really amazing. And just talking about it really doesn't do it justice because when you look at that map, it really, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it really tracks the connections that people have internally in the organization. And you can see the people who are connectors, who are important in the organization. You can really see where it's important to focus. And it's a really amazing capability that you have. Can you tell me maybe a little bit more about how you guys have used that map?
Sure. Yeah, we generate the map in one of two ways. Sometimes we just ask people, who do you collaborate with? We've learned that that's a really good signal to just ask instead of trying to guess based on who are they, messaging in Slack or Teams or emailing, which has a lot of noise. We can also use recognition data. So they use a recognition system. We can look at that type of data to conduct the map. But the importance of the map is twofold. Not only does it visualize the context of the culture, kind of an organic org chart, if you will, but it also humanizes the data. It gets us away from bar charts or scatter plot graphs where you can kind of see trends. But when you actually see people as a node with all that culture data layered against it, when someone is feeling isolated or they don't belong, wow, you see them literally represented like that.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is. It's really cool.
Thank you. For leaders, I think that
Yeah.
helps them understand the problems. We can deduct all kinds of things from that map, whether it's, here's a whole minority segment that feels disengaged. They maybe need an ERG, or here's a bunch of people with emotional capacity issues all connected to the same manager. There's an opportunity for training for that manager.
Right.
And that never
Yeah.
happens. There's never one manager that always seems to have the issues. That never happens,
Problems,
Charlie.
yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And Charlie, the other question I've got is, you know, it's ongoing, kind of listening. How do we ensure that we're not overly surveying, an organization? I mean, we talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So survey fatigue,
Yeah.
survey burnout. So we get that question a lot. And here's the truth. We know this from practice. If you treat listening and surveys with the right feedback loops, instead of people leaning away from it and getting fatigue, they actually start to lean into it because they know their voice is being valued. So here's the trick. It's not just a one-time, let's get your feedback, and then the data sits on the shelf and nothing ever happens with it. That's creates fatigue. It's like, why did I take 5 minutes or 10 minutes to fill out the survey if you're not going to do anything with it? And that happens with the annual employee engagement surveys. And unfortunately, so many organizations that OrgVitals is taken into, like, that's sort of the taste that people have. So we have to get them to understand, all right, we're going to have a process that does this differently. And what that process looks like is, all right, we want to listen. We want to keep it bite-sized, and we want to make sure it's just easy. That's first off. But then the feedback loop happens when the findings are reported back. We make sure that happens at a high level. Just here's what we're learning about our culture, just so people understand, hey, where we're learning. But then the next really important piece is really on the consultant side, where we want to make sure there's an opportunity for people to come up with ideas of how to improve things. Sometimes that's focus groups. Sometimes it's just a town hall. Sometimes it could even be emails, but we've seen a lot of success when you go from the findings to actually talking about, all right, we want you to feel like you have ownership of this culture. We're not going to just say in action what we're going to do about it, but let's let those ideas come from anywhere, where employees feel like, all right, now we understand kind of some issues going. What do we think are the right solutions? What you're doing is you're creating buy-in and that sense of shared ownership and responsibility. And you've heard the phrase sort of listening is half the battle. And what you happen in this situation is everyone starts to feel better about the environment because they're actively now engaged about the environment. And that voice now has meaning. So the next time you do the survey, the participation rates go up because they've understood the whole idea that they're going to be included in the findings and they're going to have a voice about what changes. And now they understand this is a process that they're invited into. They're no longer just, filling out a survey and you wave goodbye. I think it makes all the difference in the world to complete feedback loops in that way. The next thing you know, we call it, building the continuous feedback muscle. Literally, the organization is really creating cohesive culture. And again, the process is half the battle.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
So one of the things that has happened in the last 2 years is that things have changed like really quickly. So fast in so many instances where we've had the pandemic and people worked from home almost at the almost on the spot, and then we've pivoted to the great resignation, and now we're pivoting to people being laid off, and there's just been so many things that happen so quickly, and traditional survey methods really are, in my mind, more of a lagging indicator as opposed to a leading indicator. So talk to me a little bit about how OrgVitals, and I've seen it firsthand through the OrgVitals, is more of a leading indicator, and how it's ahead of and it's on time, real feedback about what's going on with your employees in the system.
That's right. I'm glad you brought this up. So when we think about predictive intelligence, it's very much about just connecting the dots. All right. We know from our data that if these indicators are showing up, then you can expect this to happen over the next year. Right. And I'll use a case study here, which is we were working with a K-12 school that actually had really good retention rates of its teachers. But if you look around the whole country post-pandemic, I mean, teachers are stressed out to the max. There's a lot of people just deciding to change careers or just remove themselves entirely, early retirements, big time labor shortage. And this is just, this is happening across so many industries right now. But with this use case, what we saw is, a lot of signs here in the data for future burnout. right? There's no way, even though you have a good culture here, there's no way you're going to sustain the people. We had workload capacity issues. They had some alignment issues. They really got to get ahead of this. But the good news is they have a chance to get ahead of it. Like, because they were using OrgVitals and they were investing in their culture and they believed in investing in their culture. That's the whole point, right? Is to get ahead of things and look around the corner. And with the data, they are able to do that. They're able to come up with some new programs and some new ways to buy capacity for their teachers. Fantastic. I think they're really going to be able to stem the impact. So, totally. I think the value of the data isn't to have a rear view mirror, but it's to develop a roadmap of what can you do related to the employee experience differently in the future.
And then how do you work with the consultants and how do you work with the companies that have OrgVitals? Is there, best practices that OrgVitals can help bring forth and to talk about what companies should do to make changes?
Yeah, well, consultants are vital. And here's the reason. It's like, imagine OrgVitals as a Boeing making our data cockpits. Well, you can't just throw anybody in there. You need a pilot, someone who kind of understands what they're looking at and how to leverage it in the right ways. And that's where consultants come in. Most employers don't have the know-how data or the capacity to really leverage this effectively. Having a consultant on the outside, they can work with us to understand the data, action the data, really lead the stakeholders along. But the other piece is there's also often a safety barrier. Like, employees are more going to be a little bit more honest and forthcoming in their responses when they know that the consultant and OrgVitals are the one seeing it, and not, say, their boss. To that note, I want to make sure everyone aware. We actually have two systems. We have a blockchain system, fully encrypted, fully anonymous. There are a lot of employers that need to start on the shallow end because there's just no trust in their organization. Great, start there. That's why we have that system. But when they're ready, that's when we go into the network analysis, where we're going to identify people so we can really understand the different segments and individuals that need support. But back to consultants, we love working with consultants. The trickiest thing in our whole market is we don't know which employers are ready to invest in their culture and their people or not, because there's a major education gap, right? This is kind of a new thing in the grand scheme of the economics of the world, to really invest in people and take care of your people first. And the good news is a lot of employers are starting to lean that way. But, I think in the next decade, things are going to look radically different than they do today. We could waste a lot of time knocking on doors of employers saying, hey, don't you want to use OrgVitals? And most of them be like, why?
Employees, we don't care about employees. Why are we spending money on them?
We'll just hire more people.
Just get rid of those ones. Those ones are the ones we liked anyway. We'll get some new ones.
Exactly. We plan for turnover, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of organizations that do that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. The good news is there's a lot starting to get it, but it's like hard for us to know from the outside which ones get it, which ones don't. We say we like to work with transformative leaders, the ones that are post-education about the importance of this kind of data and how to really take care of their people. Great. Well, consultants are fantastic for us because consultants are already working with those transformative leaders. And again, because the data is fairly complex, let's just work together. It's a fantastic partnership, and that's why we focus on finding consultants that are ready to embrace this and will support employers. But to the education gap, I really do believe this decade is going to be very exciting for more and more employers to lean into this type of data, to work with consultants like Thrive HR, and really do right by people. I know a lot of people worried about the coming recession potentially in the U.S. And my response to that is, I don't know if that's happening or not. I know there's a lot of layoffs in certain industries, but honestly, with the groups we support, construction, manufacturing, hospitality, education, healthcare, groups with highly skilled people, groups with essential workers, they're not laying people off. They are desperate for hiring more people.
Yeah.
And the truth is they cannot find enough people. So they have to hold on to the ones they have. And that's good news for, I guess, our business. But, I think in the grand scheme of things, there's almost like two economies unfolding right now. And I think in these areas, people don't realize how healthy of an economy it is. And the fact that it's going to be paramount for those leaders of those employers to really come up with new employee experiences.
Oh, you hit the nail on the head, Charlie. Because if you're Exxon, who made $76 billion, and you're Chevron, who made $55 billion, and you've been struggling to get the type of talent that you need, for the last 2 years because it's a difficult industry to recruit into now, and you're making that kind of money. The people that you have in the organization, you desperately want to hold on to. So you're right. There are some industries that are doing phenomenally well. And then our hypothesis is that we think that some of this is a bit of a pile-on effect where companies had an opportunity to shed a little bit of headcount and do a little trimming, and maybe they didn't necessarily need to do it, but they did it. But that's a really, really good point. And we're seeing the same thing too. So I want to go back to something you said a minute ago. You talked about a transformative leader. So what is OrgVitals and what is your definition of a transformative leader? I think Ray and I have a definition, but what do you guys think that is?
Yeah, good question. This is a leader that is ready to roll up sleeves, get the right kind of data to understand what's going on, understand their blind spots, and really transform their culture, which means not just investing time, but investing the money to do so. It means empowering employees to take ownership of the culture. But at the end of it, it's just they're ready to put people first. I think there's a lot of lip service, a lot of LinkedIn posts about everything from, we love our people to we're a great place to work to look at all we're doing on the DEI initiative stuff. But, when you're an employee inside one of those companies, it can be night and day if that lip service is actually followed up with action and the right kind of investment. So when we think of transformative leaders, we want the ones that are actually investing and their post-education of why this is important. If you're still asking why this is important, then clearly you're not ready for anything we're talking about.
Yeah, and as far as organization size, we're kind of the sweet spot for this for the tool. Clearly, it could work in a startup, but the reality is it's probably more a little bit larger firms. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. We've been used by all sizes, and that's the good news. And we've seen success in all sizes. But we definitely have a sweet spot in that sort of 50, 100, all the way up to about 5,000. I think that size employers, they know that they have a lot of agency to change things and usually change things pretty quickly. And that's great. Bigger organizations, they almost need to use OrgVitals on a department by department basis. And it's because they're so huge, sometimes global, they really need to focus on facilities and or departments where, all right, that's a microculture. We're going to try to change that thing there and kind of go one by one. You can't, if you're a global organization of 10,000 people or more, you can't just do one thing that's going to fix everything across the board. You really got to go deeper into those individual microcultures. And even in some school systems, every school maybe has a microsystem, or hospitality if it's a bunch of hotels. Each facility might need to be addressed. But I think you do want to make sure there's agency to actually change things.
Can you go back and talk a little bit about the blockchain? Because I love that piece of it where it's truly anonymous. Because I've done these huge surveys before, over the years where they were, very different than what you're talking about right now. And you always would have the CEO or the CFO or someone who would say, I want to know who said that. You're going to track down who said that because we're going to figure that out. And so can you talk a little bit about that where you just that can't happen with OrgVitals? Yeah,
so it's great. Again, back to why we love working with consultants. Consultants have that spidey sense of knowing, the trust isn't here yet for you all to do the network analysis and the identification piece. That's important, but you can kind of graduate up to that. The blockchain is fantastic. It's encrypted end to end. It's a zero knowledge system, no cookies, no IP lookup. And back to consultants being the last mile of working with our we have a library of assessments. It's almost 30 assessments now. Even when you're customizing those, if you need to, we make sure the consultant doesn't ask anything that could be revealing. So we do everything we can to protect identity there, because in those low trust organizations, you have to assume there are going to be people who are desperate to know who said this thing or what have you. So it's great to have that shallow end for people to start in. And we always want to make sure when those surveys go out, there's a why. And why are we doing this, and what is this technology, and how will it be protected? And whatever tool is being used, we have really good messaging so employees understand the safety and the protections and the why. For instance, with the network analysis one and the identify thing, we make sure it's clear why it's being used. It's to judge the culture, not to judge the individual. And by the way, you can pass on any question that you think's uncomfortable. And here's who's going to see it. On the blockchain, we make sure they understand anonymous, encrypted, totally confidential. Here's who's going to see it. Here's how we're going to use it. So much about this stuff is about setting expectations with people. And then the good news is we've seen a lot of groups start on the blockchain, build the trust, and then they get to graduate up to the other system where it's much more powerful in terms of the data analysis we can provide with the network analysis. So yeah, it's nice having that tool. I don't know of any other company in the world that offers these types of things.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I just love that where you can talk to an employee population and you can tell them that this is a truly anonymous survey and that we cannot figure out who said what. So this is really your opportunity to give your feedback in a way that you haven't had before. So we're super excited that we get to partner with OrgVitals. So if you would love to talk more OrgVitals, you can talk with Ray and I as partners. And so if you want to get a hold of me, it's Jason at Thrive HR Consulting. Charlie, people want to get a hold of you and talk OrgVitals. Is there a way to get a hold of you?
Sure. They can always just message hello@orgvitals.com or message me individually at charley@orgvitals.com, CHARLEY @orgvitals.com.
And Ray, how do we find you? Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Great. And well, talk to me. It's Ray, REY at thrivehrconsulting.com.
And we're big proponents of OrgVitals, and we want to help you roll it out within your organization. It's just a great tool.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Wednesday. Talk soon.
Thanks,
Charlie. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.